Imagine you're deep inside a cave, the air thick and heavy. A single beam of light illuminates a small fossil, a bone that looks human, but not quite. This isn't a scene from a movie. It's the real story of how we discovered a mysterious new branch of our family tree, right here in Southeast Asia. This is the story of Homo luzonensis. Back in 2007, a team of archaeologists was digging in Callao Cave on the island of Luzon in the Philippines. They found a single foot bone, the third metatarsal, buried deep within the cave floor. At first, they thought it belonged to a small-bodied modern human, a Homo sapiens. The bone was dated to be about 67,000 years old, making it the oldest evidence of humans in the Philippines at the time. But something about it was off. It was small, and its shape was a little different. It was an exciting find, but just one bone wasn't enough to make any grand conclusions, so the digging continued. Year after year, the team returned to Callao Cave hoping to find more. Then in 2011 and 2015, they hit the jackpot. They unearthed 12 more bones and teeth from the same layer of sediment. These included hand and foot bones, a piece of a thigh bone, and several teeth. They clearly belonged to at least 3 different individuals, 2 adults and 1 child. And when they examined these new fossils, the mystery deepened. These weren't the bones of Homo sapiens. They were a strange mosaic, a mix of features never seen together before. The premolar teeth, for example, had 3 roots, a feature that's very rare in modern humans, but more common in older hominins like australopithecus. The finger and toe bones were curved, similar to those of apes and early hominins who were adapted for climbing. This suggests that whatever this creature was, it was comfortable, both walking on 2 legs and moving through the trees. Yet other features looked more modern. The small size of the molar teeth, for instance, resembled those of Homo sapiens. It was a perplexing puzzle. Were these just unusual modern humans? Or were they something else entirely? After years of meticulous analysis, in 2019, the team finally announced their stunning conclusion to the world. These fossils represented a brand new species of ancient human, Homo luzonensis, named after the island where it was found. Now this is where the story gets really mind-bending. The fossils were dated to be between 50,000 and 67,000 years old. Think about that for a second. This was a time when our own species, Homo sapiens, was already spreading across the globe. Neanderthals were still living in Europe and Asia. The hobbits, Homo floresiensis, were living on an island in Indonesia. And now, we know another distinct human species was living in the Philippines. The world during the late Pleistocene was a much more diverse place, in human terms, than we ever imagined. It wasn't just us. We had cousins, and some of them were very, very different. One of the biggest questions is, how did Homo luzonensis get to Luzon in the first place? Luzon has always been an island. It was never connected to the mainland of Asia by any land bridges, even when sea levels were at their lowest during the ice ages. To get there, these ancient humans would have had to make a deliberate sea crossing. This is a huge deal. For a long time, it was thought that only Homo sapiens were capable of such sophisticated behavior. But the presence of Homo luzonensis on Luzon challenges that idea completely. The story gets even more incredible. In 2018, another discovery was made not far from Callao Cave. Archaeologists found a 709,000-year-old butchered rhinoceros skeleton alongside stone tools. That's right, 709,000 years ago. This pushes back the timeline for hominin activity on Luzon by hundreds of thousands of years. While we haven't found any hominin fossils from that time, it strongly suggests that the ancestors of Homo luzonensis arrived on the island a very, very long time ago. Perhaps they were an even earlier hominin like Homo erectus who made the journey and then evolved in isolation. This brings us to a fascinating concept in evolution called island dwarfism, or, more broadly, the island rule. When a species gets isolated on an island with limited resources and no large predators, strange things can happen over many generations. Large animals tend to get smaller, while small animals can get larger. We see this with the hobbit, Homo floresiensis, which stood only about a meter tall. Homo luzonensis was also incredibly small. Based on the size of its bones and teeth, scientists estimate it was probably under 4 feet tall. Its unique mix of primitive and advanced traits is likely the result of evolving for hundreds of thousands of years in the unique, isolated environment of Luzon. The curved finger and toe bones might have been an adaptation to the island's forested, mountainous terrain, allowing them to climb for food or safety. Their small stature would have been an advantage in a resource-limited environment. They became a species perfectly tuned to their island home. So what happened to them? Why did they disappear? The simple answer is, we don't know for sure. The most recent fossils we have are from 50,000 years ago. It's possible that the arrival of modern humans, Homo sapiens, in the region played a role. Our ancestors were incredibly adaptable and may have outcompeted Homo luzonensis for resources. It's also possible that environmental changes, like volcanic eruptions which are common in the Philippines, could have led to their extinction. Unfortunately, the tropical climate of the Philippines is not ideal for preserving fossils. DNA breaks down quickly in warm, humid conditions. Scientists have tried to extract DNA from the Homo luzonensis bones, but so far without success. Without DNA, it's difficult to know for certain where they fit in our family tree. Are they descended from Homo erectus? Or perhaps another unknown hominin lineage that migrated out of Africa? For now, the bones are all we have to go on. The discovery of Homo luzonensis is a powerful reminder of how much we still have to learn about our own evolutionary past. It shatters the simple, linear picture of human evolution we once had, that one species neatly replaced another. Instead, it reveals a complex bushy family tree, with multiple human species living and evolving simultaneously in different parts of the world. It shows us that for most of our history, we were not alone. Each new fossil, each new discovery adds another piece to this incredible puzzle. It forces us to ask new questions and rethink old answers. Who were these other humans? What were their lives like? What could they do? The bones from Callao Cave may belong to a species without a written history, a people from an island without a memory, but they speak volumes. They tell a story of survival, of adaptation, and of a human world far richer and more diverse than we could have ever dreamed. And the search for more answers continues, buried deep in the earth, just waiting to be found. Imagine you're piecing together a puzzle, but the pieces come from completely different boxes. That's essentially the mystery of Homo luzonensis, a human species whose anatomy is so bizarre, it's rewriting our understanding of evolution. Discovered in Callao Cave in the Philippines, this ancient human relative presents a fascinating paradox. The fossils, dating back to as recently as 50,000 years ago, show a collection of traits that, frankly, shouldn't exist together in one individual, especially not at that point in time. So what makes Homo luzonensis so strange? It's what we call a mosaic anatomy. On one hand, some of its features look surprisingly modern. Its molars, for instance, are small and simple, very similar to our own Homo sapiens. This suggests a diet or chewing behavior not unlike modern humans. You'd look at these teeth and think, okay, this fits neatly into the later stages of human evolution. But then you look at its hands and feet, and the story completely changes. The finger and toe bones of Homo luzonensis are curved. This is a primitive trait, something we typically see in much older hominins like australopithecus, who lived millions of years ago in Africa. Curved phalanges are an adaptation for climbing trees. For a species living alongside early modern humans in the late Pleistocene, this is completely unexpected. It's like finding a brand new smartphone that also has a rotary dial. Why would a human relative from 50,000 years ago need features for climbing? Let's put this into perspective. Australopithecus, famous for the Lucy fossil, roamed Africa over 3 million years ago. They were small, ape-like humans who were very much adapted to a life spent both on the ground and in the trees. Their curved fingers and toes gave them a powerful grip for navigating branches. For centuries of archaeological discovery, we believe these traits were evolutionary baggage that our ancestors shed as they became more committed to walking upright on two legs. We traded our climbing skills for the efficiency of bipedalism. Homo erectus, our more direct ancestor, had straight fingers and toes, fully adapted for life on the ground. So finding these australopith-like features in Homo luzonensis, a contemporary of Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, is a huge shock. It's not just a minor quirk. It's a fundamental challenge to the linear progressive model of human evolution we've held for so long. It suggests that the story of our family tree isn't a straight line from primitive to modern, but a messy, branching bush with all sorts of strange and wonderful experiments happening in different parts of the world. The fact that Homo luzonensis survived into the late Pleistocene is another layer of the mystery. By 50,000 years ago, the world was largely dominated by Homo sapiens, who were spreading out of Africa and across the globe. Neanderthals were still around in Eurasia, and the famous hobbits, Homo floresiensis, were living on another island in Indonesia. But the discovery of Homo luzonensis adds another player to this already complex stage. It means that while our own species was painting caves in Europe and hunting mammoths, a tiny tree-climbing human relative was thriving on an island in Southeast Asia. This makes the world of the late Pleistocene a much more diverse and interesting place than we ever imagined. This brings us to the big question: how did this strange mix of traits come to be? There are a couple of major theories, and they both have fascinating implications. The first theory involves something called island stasis, or evolutionary conservatism. The idea here is that the ancestors of Homo luzonensis might have been a very early hominin, perhaps even an australopith-like species, that somehow made its way out of Africa and to the island of Luzon long before we thought possible. Once isolated on the island, the intense evolutionary pressures present on the mainland might have been absent. This isolation could have allowed them to retain their primitive, tree-climbing traits for millions of years, while only certain other features, like their teeth, evolved in a more modern direction. Think of it like a remote island where dinosaurs somehow survived. On Luzon, an ancient lineage of human might have persisted, sheltered from the evolutionary currents that were shaping the rest of the human family. This is a radical idea because it would mean that hominins far more primitive than Homo erectus managed to cross open water, a feat we didn't think was possible for them. The second theory is perhaps even more mind-bending: convergent evolution. This is the idea that the ancestor of Homo luzonensis was actually a more advanced hominin, like Homo erectus, who arrived on the island and then re-evolved primitive-looking traits. Why would this happen? Life on an island is different. Resources might be concentrated in the trees, like fruits or small animals. In this unique environment, the ability to climb might have become newly advantageous. So over thousands of generations, natural selection might have favored individuals with features that made them better climbers, causing their finger and toe bones to become curved again. This would mean that the primitive features we see aren't actually retained from a distant ancestor, but are instead a new adaptation that just happens to look like an old one. It's evolution repeating itself, or finding a similar solution to a similar problem. If this is the case, it shows just how flexible and responsive our evolutionary path can be, adapting in unexpected ways to local conditions. So we have two competing scenarios. Either an ancient primitive lineage survived in isolation for an incredibly long time, or a more advanced lineage arrived and then evolved backwards, in a sense, to fit its new island home. Both possibilities are revolutionary. There is also a third, more complex idea that combines elements of both. Perhaps the ancestor was an early form of Homo erectus that already possessed a mix of traits, and island isolation simply amplified these unique characteristics over time. Regardless of which theory turns out to be correct, the existence of Homo luzonensis forces us to throw out the old, simple map of human evolution. The idea of a single line of progress from ape to human is officially dead. In its place is a picture of a diverse world, populated by many different kinds of humans, each adapting to their own corner of the planet. Homo luzonensis, the hobbit Homo floresiensis, the Denisovans in Siberia. These discoveries show that our own species, Homo sapiens, was not alone. We were part of a rich and varied family, and we are the only branch that, for reasons we are still trying to understand, survived. The puzzle of Homo luzonensis is far from solved. The fossils are few and much of their biology and behavior remains a mystery. Did they use tools? What did they eat? How did they interact with the unique megafauna of the Philippines, like the pygmy buffalo? Each new discovery in Callao Cave and other sites in the region will bring us one step closer to understanding this enigmatic member of our human family. It is a powerful reminder that there are still incredible secrets about our own origins buried beneath our feet, waiting to be unearthed. The story of us is still being written, and Homo luzonensis is one of its most surprising and exciting chapters yet. Have you ever stood on a beach, looked out at the horizon, and wondered what lies beyond the water? Now imagine doing that not as a modern human with boats and GPS, but as one of our ancient relatives, hundreds of thousands of years ago. This isn't a fantasy. It's a real scientific puzzle that is rewriting the story of human evolution. Today, we're diving deep into the mystery of Homo luzonensis and their incredible, seemingly impossible journey across the open sea. Let's set the scene. We're in the Philippines on the island of Luzon. In 2007, archaeologists digging in Callao Cave discovered a single, small foot bone. It was clearly from a hominin, a member of the human family tree, but it didn't quite match anything we'd seen before. Over the next decade, more discoveries followed: teeth, finger bones, a thigh bone. Together, they painted a picture of a unique small-bodied hominin species officially named Homo luzonensis. In 2019, the fossils themselves were dated to be at least 50,000 years old, but the story gets even more incredible. At another site on Luzon, researchers found stone tools alongside a butchered rhinoceros skeleton. The age? A mind-blowing 709,000 years old. This means that some early hominin, likely the ancestors of Homo luzonensis, was living on this island 750,000 years ago. Now, here's the million-dollar question. How did they get there? Look at a map of Southeast Asia. During the ice ages when sea levels were much lower, many islands we know today were connected to the mainland of Asia, forming a massive landmass called Sunda. Animals and early humans, like Homo erectus, could simply walk from what is now Vietnam or Malaysia all the way to Java and Borneo. This land bridge theory has been the standard explanation for how hominins spread across the region for a long time. But Luzon was never connected to this landmass. Never. Even at the lowest sea levels, a significant stretch of open water always separated Luzon from the nearest land. This is a huge deal. It means that to get to Luzon, these ancient hominins had to cross the sea. This discovery completely shakes up our traditional understanding of early human capabilities. For decades, the prevailing wisdom was that intentional sea travel was a hallmark of our own species, Homo sapiens emerging only within the last 50,000 to 100,000 years. The idea of an earlier hominin, like a relative of Homo erectus, purposefully building a raft and setting sail into the unknown was considered highly unlikely, if not impossible. The old theory suggested that any hominins found on islands that were never connected to the mainland must have gotten there by accident. Maybe a small group was swept out to sea during a tsunami, or while clinging to a raft of vegetation torn from a riverbank during a storm. It was seen as a fluke, a one-off stroke of luck, or perhaps bad luck depending on your perspective. But the evidence from Luzon and other islands is starting to make the accidental rafting hypothesis look a little shaky. Think about it. For a new population to be established on an island, you don't just need one lucky individual to wash ashore. You need a viable group, both males and females, to survive the journey and then thrive and reproduce in a new environment. The odds of this happening by pure accident are astronomically low. And Luzon isn't an isolated case. Far to the south, on the Indonesian island of Flores, we have another famous small-bodied hominin, Homo floresiensis, also known as the Hobbit. Like Luzon, Flores was also an island that required a water crossing to reach, and evidence shows hominins were there over 1 million years ago. Now we have two separate instances of archaic hominins on islands that demanded a sea voyage. Suddenly, the accident theory seems less probable. Could these journeys have been intentional? This possibility opens up a fascinating new window into the minds of our ancient cousins. If these hominins were intentionally crossing water, it implies a level of cognitive ability we never thought they had. It suggests they could observe their environments, see land on the horizon, and understand that it could be reached. It implies planning and cooperation. You can't build a raft by yourself. You need a group working together, gathering materials like bamboo and lashing them together. This requires communication, shared goals, and foresight. They would need to think, if we build this floating platform, we can get over there. This is a significant cognitive leap. Furthermore, it suggests a basic form of navigation. They might not have had maps or a compass, but they could have used the sun, the stars, or the direction of swells to maintain their course. Perhaps they were just island hopping, traveling short distances from one visible island to the next. But even that requires a deliberate choice and an understanding of cause and effect. They weren't just passively drifting. They were actively propelling themselves towards a goal. This challenges the old view of archaic hominins as being cognitively limited, basically just a step above apes. The evidence from Luzon and Flores suggests they were resourceful, innovative, and capable of complex problem-solving. They were explorers. So, what does this all mean for the grand story of human evolution? It means our models for how early hominins moved and lived need a serious update. The old simple picture of hominins slowly walking out of Africa and across land bridges is incomplete. We now have to include a new dimension, the sea. The oceans weren't necessarily the hard barriers we once thought. For some adventurous groups, they were highways. This paints a much more dynamic and complex picture of our past. It suggests that different hominin species scattered across the globe may have developed sophisticated behaviors independently, driven by the unique challenges and opportunities of their local environments. The hominins of island Southeast Asia weren't just surviving. They were adapting and innovating in remarkable ways. They became sailors, long before we ever thought possible. The discovery of Homo luzonensis and their seafaring ancestors forces us to be more open-minded about the capabilities of other human species. It reminds us that our family tree is not a simple, linear progression leading inevitably to us. It's a bushy, branching tree, full of diverse and fascinating relatives, each with their own unique story. Some of those stories, it turns out, were written not on land, but on the water. They were pioneers who looked across the waves and didn't just see a barrier, but a pathway to a new world. And in doing so, they've completely changed our understanding of who we are and where we come from. Ever heard of a hobbit that wasn't from Middle-earth? Well, today we re-diving into the story of a real-life human relative that might just fit the description *Homo luzonensis *. Discovered in Callao Cave on the island of Luzon in the Philippines. This species is completely rewriting what we thought we knew about human evolution. And it all comes down to one fascinating concept: the island rule. Imagine an island as a closed laboratory of evolution. When a species gets isolated on one, strange things start to happen. This is the core of island biogeography. With limited resources and fewer predators, the normal rules of survival get a massive shakeup. One of the most dramatic effects is island dwarfism. On the mainland, being big can be a huge advantage. You can defend yourself from predators and compete for food. But on an island with no large predators and scarce resources, a big body is just a gas guzzler. It requires too much food to maintain. So, over generations, large animals tend to shrink. We see this with dwarf elephants and hippos on Mediterranean islands. It's very likely that *Homo luzonensis*, being notably small, is a prime example of this phenomenon in the human family tree. Their small stature would have been a massive energy saver in a restricted environment. But the island rule has a flip side: island gigantism. Small animals that arrive on an island, like rodents or lizards, might find themselves in a paradise with no predators. Suddenly, the pressure to stay small and hide disappears. They can evolve to be much larger to take advantage of new food sources that were previously out of reach. Think of the giant tortoises of the Galapagos or the extinct giant rats of, you guessed it, the Philippines. It's a complete reversal of fortunes, all dictated by the island environment. So you have some species shrinking and others growing. This leads to a total reshuffling of the ecosystem. On the mainland, you have a complex web of countless species filling every possible role. On an island, the cast of characters is much smaller. This means species have to get creative. They start filling ecological niches that would be occupied by other animals on the mainland. For *Homo luzonensis*, this might have meant they weren't just big-brain tool users. They might have adapted to climbing trees more, suggested by their curved finger and toe bones, perhaps filling a niche similar to some primates. They were carving out a unique way of life, shaped entirely by their island home. However, this specialized evolution comes with a big risk. Island ecosystems are incredibly fragile. Because they're so specialized and have low genetic diversity, they're extremely vulnerable to change. A new predator, a new disease, or a sudden change in climate can be catastrophic. The arrival of a new, more adaptable species, like our own *Homo sapiens*, could have easily spelled disaster for an established island species like *Homo luzonensis*. Their finely tuned, isolated world could have been thrown into chaos, leading to their eventual extinction. Resource limitation is the name of the game on an island, and when a new competitor shows up, the game can end abruptly. It wasn't just their bodies that adapted. Their behavior and culture likely did too. Living in a small, isolated group on an island for thousands of years would have profound social effects. Imagine a community where everyone knows everyone, and your entire world is a few hundred square kilometers. Cooperation, knowledge sharing, and social bonds would be absolutely critical for survival. The kind of tools they made, the way they hunted, and the stories they told would all be uniquely shaped by their shared, isolated experience. They would have developed a culture that was perfectly tailored to Luzon, a unique chapter in the human story that we're only just beginning to decipher. The discovery of *Homo luzonensis*, alongside the hobbit *Homo floresiensis* from the Indonesian island of Flores, has blown the doors wide open on our understanding of human evolution. For a long time, we pictured a fairly linear progression, a single human story unfolding across the vast continents of Africa and Eurasia. But these island dwellers show us that's not the whole picture. It proves that once early humans left the mainland, their evolutionary journey took wild, unpredictable turns. Each island became its own separate experiment, producing new kinds of humans we never imagined possible. It expands the map of human evolution, adding countless new, unexplored territories. We're no longer looking at a single family tree, but a whole tangled forest of them. Who knows what other unique human relatives are still waiting to be discovered on other islands across the world? The story of Homo luzonensis isn't just about one species. It's a testament to the incredible creative power of evolution in isolation. Ever heard of a human relative so mysterious they almost seem like a ghost from our past? Today, we're journeying to the island of Luzon in the Philippines to uncover the story of Homo luzonensis, a species that vanished without a sound, leaving behind more questions than answers. Imagine this. It's 2007, and archaeologists are digging in Callao Cave. They unearth a single foot bone. It's old, really old, about 67,000 years old. But it doesn't quite look like ours. Fast forward a decade, and more fossils emerge: teeth, finger bones, a thigh bone. When scientists put the pieces together, the picture that forms is of a hominin unlike any other. They were small, maybe under 4 feet tall, with a strange mix of ancient and modern features. Their curved finger and toe bones suggest they were skilled climbers, perhaps moving through the trees like our much earlier ancestors, the australopiths. Yet their teeth had surprisingly modern traits. This bizarre mosaic of features was so unique that in 2019, they were officially named a new species, Homo luzonensis. So who were these enigmatic people? The story starts long before their discovery. The earliest evidence of hominin activity on Luzon dates back over 700,000 years. That right stone tools and a butchered rhinoceros skeleton prove that someone was on this island long before modern humans are thought to have arrived. Could these ancient toolmakers have been the ancestors of Homo luzonensis? It's a tantalizing possibility. It suggests a group of early hominins, perhaps even Homo erectus, somehow crossed the sea to Luzon and then, over hundreds of thousands of years of isolation, evolved into this distinct, small-bodied species. This process, called island dwarfism, is common in the animal kingdom. Think of pygmy elephants or mammoths. When large animals get trapped on an island with limited resources, evolution often favors a smaller size. This brings us to their famous neighbors, the hobbits of Flores Island in Indonesia, Homo floresiensis. Like Homo luzonensis, they were a small, island-dwelling species with a unique mix of traits. For a long time, the hobbits were seen as a one-off evolutionary oddity. But the discovery of Homo luzonensis changed everything. It proved that the evolution of our genus, Homo, was far more complex and diverse than we ever imagined, especially in Southeast Asia. It wasn't a simple, linear march toward Homo sapiens. Instead, it was a branching, tangled bush of different human forms coexisting and adapting in wonderfully weird ways across the globe. Now for the million-dollar question. What happened to them? The fossils of Homo luzonensis are dated to between 50,000 and 67,000 years ago. This is right around the time that modern humans, Homo sapiens, were beginning to spread across Southeast Asia. One strong hypothesis is that our ancestors arrived on Luzon and simply outcompeted the native Homo luzonensis. With more advanced technology, different social structures, or perhaps a greater ability to exploit the island's resources, we may have driven them to extinction, either directly through conflict or indirectly by taking over their habitat. It's a story that has played out time and again whenever our species has expanded into new territories. Another possibility is a natural disaster. The Philippines is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a hotbed of volcanic activity. A massive eruption could have easily wiped out a small, isolated population like Homo luzonensis. Think of a prehistoric Pompeii, but on a scale that could erase an entire species from existence. The island environment that shaped them also made them incredibly vulnerable. Small, isolated populations have less genetic diversity, making them more susceptible to disease or sudden environmental changes. A single catastrophe or a new pathogen could have been all it took. The greatest mystery of all, however, lies in their genetics. To date, scientists have been completely unable to extract any DNA from the Homo luzonensis fossils. The hot, humid climate of the Philippines is notoriously brutal for preserving ancient genetic material. DNA degrades rapidly in these conditions. Without DNA, we can't definitively place them on our family tree. We can't know how they're related to us, to Denisovans or to Homo erectus. We can't test for interbreeding. Are their genes still present in tiny amounts in modern Filipino populations? For example, we know that many people in the region today carry DNA from the Denisovans, another mysterious ancient human group. It's possible that ancestors of modern indigenous groups on Luzon, like the Ita people, may have encountered and interbred with Homo luzonensis. But without a genetic baseline from the fossils, we simply can't know. It's a frustrating dead end. This lack of DNA makes them fundamentally different from species like Neanderthals or Denisovans, where we have a wealth of genetic information. With Neanderthals, we can reconstruct their appearance, understand their health, and pinpoint exactly how much of their DNA we carry today. With Homo luzonensis, we are left with only the silent testimony of their bones. We have the physical evidence of their existence, but their genetic ghost remains completely elusive. They are a missing piece of the human evolutionary puzzle, and the box has been sealed shut by time and tropical heat. The story of Homo luzonensis is a powerful reminder of how much we still don't know about our own origins. For every fossil we find, there are countless species that may have lived and died without leaving a single trace. They are footnotes in the grand epic of evolution, lost to time. Homo luzonensis was one of these ghost lineages, a unique experiment in being human that ultimately failed. They thrived in isolation for hundreds of thousands of years, a testament to the adaptability of our ancestors. But in the end, they vanished, leaving behind only a handful of bones in a cave and a profound mystery for us to solve. Their silence speaks volumes about the fragility of life and the vast, incomplete story of human evolution. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of humanity's most enigmatic relatives. What do you think happened to them? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into our ancient past, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the mysteries of history and science. See you next time.